Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. One of the things I am so grateful for is the ability to see the way that many doctors approach health and well-being shifting globally on a massive scale, and beginning to utilize things such as plant medicines as alternative modalities for healing. In my opinion, this amazing paradigm shift we are experiencing will open up the doorway to true healthcare, aka preventative medicine, rather than what we currently have, which is best described as sick care, aka once you're sick, you then go to receive care. Today's guest on the show is a man who, along with being a medical doctor from Australia, is a leading voice and proponent behind the utilization of cannabis for healthcare and well-being as a whole. And in this episode, we dive into his background and story of moving through addiction and the typical medical model both for himself and his patients, his own journey into cannabis and the profound benefits he has found within the plant, and much, much more. So please help me in welcoming my man, Dr. James Stewart, to the show. Dr. James Stewart, my man, I am so excited to be here with you today, man. We've been planning this for so long and perfectly divine. Today is the time. I'm so pumped to have you here, man. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. It's great. We finally put this together, worked out our time differences, and got a time that worked for both of us. So, mate, totally stoked to be here. I've loved your podcast. I love everything you say from out here in Australia. So, mate, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be on here, mate. I'm very, very, very stoked that you've asked me on.
Oh, man, guys, we were chatting before we hit record, too, about how Dr. James is in Australia. And I feel like in a parallel universe, I'm meant to live in Australia because every person I meet from Australia is the coolest person I've ever met. You know, I love your guys' comedy too. Like just everything I see about Australia, I'm like, those people get me, you know? So
yeah. No, it's a pretty good place, mate. And I'm even probably in one of the best places in Australia called Noosa, Noosa. It's up in Queensland, and it's a pretty magical place. I reckon it's probably one of the most beautiful places on the planet. So I've got it extra lucky up here.
Dude, that's wild, man. You know, Boston did beat you out at one thing, though, you Australians. You want to know what that one thing was?
Yeah.
It's an award that I didn't want us to have, but now we have, and I'm not sure what to do with it. So here's this, right? So you know that like in Boston, sharks aren't specifically like, you know, native to here. When you think Boston, you don't think like, oh, there's a lot of sharks there, right?
Yeah.
Well, with whatever's going on with climate, whatever, you know, there's a lot of seals moving up. And so now between the months of, I think it's June and like October, it's like some 4-month span, Cape Cod, Massachusetts has the largest collection of great white sharks anywhere in the world, right? So we took it away from you guys.
We can have that one.
You guys in South Africa, you know, like.
After you guys have that, we've got enough other deadly animals out here, mate. There's everything around the corner to kill you over here. So.
Yeah, you could afford to give us one, you know. That's hilarious, man. Well, you know, as fun as sharks are, right, and as fun as those things are, we're here to talk about something even more fun, dude, which is the topic of cannabis, other psychedelics, etc. And I'd love to start this out, man, with, you know, your own personal journey into these medicines. You know, like what has been your experiences with them? How did you first come into them? You know, especially with your background, you know, like how does someone that otherwise maybe is told drugs are bad, these kind of things, end up deciding, you know what, I'm going to try those things out. I'd love to hear that journey, man.
Yeah, no, it's I guess it's a pretty interesting journey, I think. And I think I've come from a background that most traditional doctors haven't come from. So I'm a general practitioner, a family physician out here in Australia. I've done my studies through biomedical science, then med school, and then onto my hospital rotations and training through the College of General Practitioners, all that kind of stuff. But I guess I had I call it advantage of going to med school when I was older. I didn't know I wanted to be a doctor. None of my family are doctors. They're farmers and, you know, all different types of things. And so medicine is in our family. And prior to going back to university when I think I was 28 when I went back, I was a DJ and owned a few clubs around the area. So I did experiment with a lot of, I guess you could say, recreational drugs. Growing up on the Gold Coast and sort of, surfing, cannabis was around us a fair bit, and that was part of the culture. We'd have a bit of a smoke, go for a surf, go get some McDonald's, have a smoke, go for a surf. This was kind of the thing we would do on the weekends when we were growing up. So I knew early on that cannabis did something special for me when I was able to get the right type. Back in the day, you didn't really have much of a choice. You had to get whatever old mate on the street was giving you. But as someone with, ADHD and a really racing mind and a bit of sort of underlying anxiety, I can remember, the first few times trying cannabis, that it just slowed my brain down. I was just like, whoa, man, here we go. And I'm present in the room. I'm back. I'm not having 1,000 thoughts going on. I didn't really think much of it. I just thought that was what cannabis did. And it wasn't until later on and going through med training and that kind of stuff, and then, being taught all these pharmaceuticals that we're taught in med school, doesn't sit well with me. It's all end stage disease, give them this pill. End stage, give them this pill. We don't learn about the foundations of health. We don't learn about hydration, diet, exercise, mindfulness, stretching, all this kind of stuff we don't learn about. And it's just pills. It's just give them this pill. If that doesn't work, give them another pill. That doesn't work, another pill. And I remember thinking, what about my plants? Why aren't we using plant medicine? And I remember I said a couple of times in some lectures, is a plant's an option? And I nearly got pushed out out of the lecture hall or something. Like, what are you talking plants? Burn him. He's the devil. He's
a witch.
It was just, it's just really pharmaceutical driven, our medical industry. I'm sure it's probably the same out there.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And I was, we would prescribe kids with ADHD, we would prescribe them Ritalin and dexamphetamine and all this kind of stuff. And I just remember thinking, is there a role for cannabis in this? I didn't know much about it. I'd never learnt much about cannabis, and I thought, well, I can't give kids THC and I can't have them, smoking cones in the garage, but there's got to be something in there, something that resonated with me. And then medicinal cannabis became legal to prescribing in Australia in 2016, so you could go and see a doctor. And I remember back then there was only about 3 products on the market. There was CBD oil, THC oil, and maybe one. I know the flowers didn't come for ages. Flowers is the medical term we use for buds out here. and finally, when we could start prescribing it, I remember thinking, I had my first patient I prescribed cannabis to. She was a lady who I couldn't get to sleep. And I'd thrown every sleeping pill at her under the sun, which now I think, oh my God, that is so dangerous because we know how addictive sleeping pills are, but that's what we were taught. Yeah. Anyway, I said to her, look, there's medicinal cannabis online, has come out. Would you like to try some THC oil? And she's like, oh, okay, I grew up in the 70s. I had a little bit. And I was like, okay, all right, sweet. I prescribed her some THC oil. And 2 days later, she came into the clinic without a booking, came into my room, gave me a big hug, and she's like, "My God, I've had 2 nights sleep." And I was just like, "Yes!" And that's when my journey sort of started. I got, as a GP, as a family, you don't get a lot of sort of success stories. I mean, you do kind of hold people with their pain, or you hold them where they are, but you never have people come in and hug you and say, "My God, my life has changed." And that seems to be a common theme I'm getting now. When I'm prescribing people cannabis and I'm teaching them how to use it, they come back and they say, oh, my God, this is working. And they want to take their medicine, and so it works. With other pharmaceuticals, there's some ridiculous statistic that only 50%, they only take their medicine half the time because they probably don't feel any benefit. It might give them side effects. But with what I'm seeing in the cannabis space is it works, so people want to take their medicine. And it's just been an absolute game changer out here. So I'm still a GP, but I only prescribe cannabis. So I will see someone for anxiety, I will see someone for sleep, I will see someone for aches and pains, and often I can help them with some cannabis products rather than giving them painkillers, sleeping pills, putting them on an antidepressant. Yeah, it's a pretty hard pill to swallow, knowing how many people I put on antidepressants prior to learning about medicinal cannabis, and that fucking sucks, to be honest. How many people I started on an antidepressant and how many people I put on sleeping pills. I was very strategic and I didn't start people on opioids because I knew how bad they would be. But, it's hard looking back and thinking all the things I thought I was doing right, it wasn't right. And I was never told there was this option. There was plants out there, and not just cannabis, herbs and all these other things. Like, if I had my time again, I'd probably do Chinese medicine and herbs or something like that. Like, I just think it's a much better way and a much safer way to treat people with the bloody plants we've got growing around us instead of some pill that's produced in a lab. So, that's been a bit my sort of journey with it. And, you know, I guess I had that connection early on, and then later on going back to medicine and going back to university. And for I don't know how my brain bloody worked. Like, I cooked that thing so many years under strobe lights that with everything, I was surprised when I went back. But it just, I know, my first lecture in it was human anatomy and physiology. And I remember just sitting in there going, oh my God, this is just sinking in. And it all went in, the body and all this kind of stuff. And then I just nailed all the subjects. Like, it was so unbelievable. And they said, your grades are amazing. You can get into our med program if you want. And I was like, Dr. Stewart, sweet. All right, cool, let's do it. So
that has a good ring to it.
and away I went. So yeah, so I guess that's kind of my history, and I kind of like that. I think it served me well going back to medicine a bit older, because I've lived, and patients can really relate to me now because I've been through my shit. I've battled alcohol, I've battled drug addictions, I've battled gambling, I've battled all these things, and patients can relate to me a little bit. And I've been able to sort of help patients by using things that I found helpful, and that is plant medicine. I've used cannabis to help me stop drinking, to help me stop smoking, help me stop gambling. All these things, cannabis in different forms, have absolutely helped me 100%.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. Dr. James, that is amazing, man. You know, and it's really cool too, because, you know, your story has a lot of parallels to mine as well. Finding cannabis at a young age and enjoying it, but not really having like the context of what the plan is, how much is too much, et cetera, right? And then, like, you know, coming into more life experience, right, that allows you to gain more wisdom and realizing, like, okay, I didn't know what I didn't know. And then continuing to realize that, oh, actually, I don't think I'll ever know anything, right? And like, thank goodness, because there's the point of life is not to know anything, right? But at the same time, like, being able to experience firsthand the healing powers of cannabis, not just for yourself, right, but also for others. You know, for me, it was working with cancer patients. You know, when I got to work straight up with cancer patients when I was in my early 20s at the cannabis school I went to, when I got to see them coming in with their scans showing no cancer, and they never did chemo and radiation and these types of things, and, you know, I got to see firsthand the potential there. I mean, it shifted me forever, you know? And then, of course, all of the other things that cannabis helps with that, yes, may be less severe, quote unquote, right? But are extremely important, like sleep, like aches and pains, like general mood stabilization, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, it's not that Western medicine has no place, right? It's very important for very certain situations, right? Like, you get in a car accident, like, yeah, you're going to want Western medicine, right? Like, you know, so it's not even that it's not useful, right? But it's almost like it's the wrong tool for the trade for about 93% of life. And if you're living a healthy life, it's 99% of your life that it's missing out on, because all it treats is you when you're sick. Like, think about it. When do you go to the doctor except maybe a checkup? When you're feeling perfect. Like, you don't go there, right? So they're not providing health care. They're providing sick care, right?
Yeah.
And again, sick care is necessary, right? Like, there's a real reason where if you're sick, you need care, right? But it leaves out this whole part of like, well, how do we build health over time? And that is a much more complicated subject, right? Because it's individualized. But what's beautiful about what you just articulated there is that you've had enough life experience to recognize, right, first of all, who you are. Second of all, to have compassion for anyone walking in the door, that they're a human being first, and that they deserve connection. And you love what you do because not only do you get to connect with them, but you know that you can actually offer them things that can become solutions, right? Rather than just treating, which, hey, again, someone comes in with a broken bone, it's great to be able to treat them. They're going to be happy at the end of that transaction, right? Like, they're going to be happy at the end of that. But you're going to see a lot more people that don't have necessarily broken bones, but have these chronic issues. And I imagine, just like you, like, if my clients weren't getting success in the work we were doing, I would feel horrible, you know? And so I can imagine, you know, especially when you are incentivized to stay within this certain box, right?
Yeah.
That is the medical system, right? You're incentivized to stay in that box. How challenging it can be, right? To break out of that and say, do I go where my heart is leading me, right? Which is now opening up. And luckily I'm able to legally do it now. Or do I stick within the box? And, what I know about you, Dr. James, just in the little bit of the time we've gotten to hang out in person or, through Zoom anyway, or through cameras and things like that is, if you're a raver once, you're a raver forever, and you're going to break out of every box.
At the moment, for those
yeah, exactly, dude. I was like, that's so bitching,
yeah. But yeah, on that, I've written letters to every university, a majority of medical universities in the country, and I've said head to the dean of the school, and I've said, guys, your med students need to start learning about the endocannabinoid system. And I said, I won't even talk about cannabis, but you can't deny that this system has a massive role in our body, and it plays how we feel and everything else, and interacts with everything in our body. You need to start teaching your med students this, because they are going to get asked about cannabis when they enter because it's so well known now. So I've written to everything and said, I will come and do some lectures for free on the endocannabinoid system. And if you want, then I can do some pharmacology lectures on medicinal cannabis and this kind of stuff. Not one has written back to me, and I've pestered them on all different angles. I got one reply the other day that actually said, no, thank you. We're moving away from doing lectures. We kind of danced around the topic. And I was just like, this is so frustrating, because I want to get into the universities and teach the endocannabinoid system, and then I want to get onto the colleges. And we do have a very strict pathway of medicines that we have to follow as general practitioners. There's therapeutic guidelines. And the problem is, they say someone comes in with this, you give them this antibiotic or you give them this pill. If we go outside of that, if we use our clinical judgment ourselves and go outside the therapeutic guidelines and something goes wrong, the patient can then come and say, why did you go outside the guidelines, and sue us? And it's just like, so I want to get there that there's not this straight up and down. There's actually a fork in the road that says, this is the person you've got. You can either go for an antidepressant or you can try a little bit of CBD. I'm not saying take away the pharmacology side. Leave that there if you want. Doctors get stuck in their way. Leave that there. But at least put an option in there so that if people go that route, it's on there, and then you know what to prescribe. And that's what I'm trying to get into the colleges, but no one's talking to me. It is so bloody frustrating. And the thing that makes it worse is that every day, like I've got well over 3,000 patients now, and every day I see the benefits that people can get from cannabis, and it just kills me knowing that this answer's out there, yet 95% of the other doctors in the country are still on the old school way, and they don't know that this is an option. They don't know it's there, and all they would need to do is prescribe a little bit of CBD or something like that for someone's arthritis. That's all I'd say. Don't even start with THC, because everyone gets petrified with THC. Just start with a bit of a CBD oil, so you're avoiding smoking. They can still drive. Just start with that, and the same it'll happen. That happens with each patient. As you start them on it, they come back a month and go, "This is working," and you're like, "Hey, are you getting any side effects?" No. Do I need to give you another pill? No. What? You mean I've got one medicine that's doing this? I don't have to give you another one? Wow! Like it's it's kind of banging your head against the wall out here a little bit, but we're slowly getting there. And it is becoming such a hot topic out here that the colleges can't sit quietly for much longer, because the public are starting to say, come on, like I'm seeing my friend, they say, I see my friends, my auntie, my uncle, my granddad, all these people getting benefit from cannabis. So the public has started to say, hey, well, why isn't this more accessible? Why aren't more doctors prescribing it? So, but it's not the magic pill for everyone. It's some people it doesn't work, and some people they do get some side effects, and some people just can't take it. But for a lot of people, it can be a good option.
100%. I say to everyone, right? Like nothing is for everybody except maybe air, some sort of food, and water, right? Like other than that, nothing else is meant for everybody, right? And, cannabis calls on very specific people for a very specific reason. What those reasons are, I have no idea, right? But there are certain people that I meet that are like, yeah, no, I don't like cannabis. And I'm like, I could totally feel why you wouldn't want to interact with it, right? Like I can just tell energetically, like that plant probably isn't going to be able to assist you in that individual's life journey, right? Yeah. But then for certain people, it does, and I think that even within the context of people that like cannabis, sometimes people can go through seasons of maybe they're going to connect when it feels right, and maybe other times it doesn't feel right, and they're like, oh, actually, I'm going to abstain right now, So there's such a spectrum in between it as well. And, I found that's very important to talk about, right? Because in the industry, it's kind of just rampant unconscious use.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not here to judge anyone. My job is simply to go, have you noticed this? Okay, cool. Now that you notice it, what do you choose consciously to do? If you want to hang out with the plant and just like use the substance, whatever, cool. Like, that's awesome. If that's what you want to do, go do it. But just make sure you're conscious with it. Make sure you know what you're doing. That way, if you start noticing in your life that, certain things aren't going the way you want them to, you at least have some areas to look into, some awareness from which to actually gain a deeper insight and awareness into your life, so you can remediate that. But, it is like so frustrating, and even worse than that, it's saddening, that it takes this long for medical students to learn about the endocannabinoid system, the system that is completely and entirely based on homeostasis in the body, right? Like, it is two-way communication between mind and body, right? Also, it is based on, like I said, like creating homeostasis in the body, like homeostasis. Like, think for a second, right? Not you literally, James, because you probably think about this all the time, but for anyone listening, right? Like, think about this. Think about like how upregulated society is. That's a nervous system imbalance. Then think about the impact of understanding the endocannabinoid system, which regulates homeostasis, which in part is nervous system function, right? Like, just that kind of like, 1+2 type equation is pretty profound. Like, people would really benefit, the everyday individual would really benefit in understanding the nervous system, understanding the inputs they're putting into that, coffee, etc., even cannabis, right? How it operates within there, so that they can regulate that system. And I think that's why for a lot of people, James, like, CBD, THC can help on a different level than just simply like the spiritual benefits or just the health benefits. Like, I think it actually helps the ECS regulate, and I'm not sure if there's any research out on phytocannabinoids and their direct connection to endocannabinoid system functionality, but it makes logical sense to me. I mean, that's what I feel when I interact with it.
It is. So kind of the basic, the basic way I describe the endocannabinoid system when I'm speaking to my patients or someone's interested in cannabis, and I tell them how it works, I go into a description about the endocannabinoid system. And the first thing I say is that, we create cannabinoids ourselves. And people often go, what do you mean? I said, well, we create cannabinoid molecules ourselves. So anandamide, 2-AG, and these other ones are being discovered and that kind of thing. And they're like, oh, really? And I said, yeah. So they were discovered, many, many decades ago, and then they went to find where these molecules go to, and they found the CB1 and CB2 receptor. And this one blows everyone's mind. I say, Google on your phone, what is the number one receptor in the human brain? It's a CB1 receptor. So the receptor in the highest in our brain is a cannabinoid receptor. So that has to tell you that this endocannabinoid system has a massive role in things that go on in our brain, how we think, how we interact, our mood, that kind of thing. And then the CB2 receptor is one of the most abundant receptors out in our peripheries and our immune system and all this kind of stuff. And the other thing that that I say to people, that why it's very, very clear that this plant is our medicine, is that the molecules from the plant are the exact shape to lock into our receptors in our body. Like, come on. That tells you that this plant is here to interact with us. And then they go, oh, wow. And then I say, so then what we do is when I prescribe some cannabis or something, I will say to them, I say, this is going to take time, especially, I'm a massive fan of CBD, CBG, all these minors, because they are the ones that do a lot of the work. I kind of use the analogy that THC is like the rock star, the front man of a band. Yeah. It gets all the fame, but without everything behind it, the roadies, the soundies, the merch guys, it's not going to get anything done. And THC has this big, everyone thinks it's all about THC, and it's not. Okay, yes, THC has its role, but the other cannabinoids, and they're important as well. And because we have such strict driving laws out here, I often always, there's a lot of time I have to avoid THC with people. So we're using CBD, CBG, that kind of thing. And then what I say to the patients is it's going to take time because, like you said, the endocannabinoid system brings our body back into homeostasis, brings our body into balance. So someone who's anxious, someone who's worrying all the time, their fight and flight pathway is dialed up. So they're just consciously sitting there, but subconsciously they think a tiger's going to come around the corner and attack them or something like that. Like it's just, it's built into us. And so what we will do by adding some CBD and these other things is it will slowly start to bring that fight and flight pathway back down in balance with our rest and digest pathway. but it takes time. And that's what I always say to people: is this isn't a quick fix. This, you got to take your CBD every day and this kind of thing, but it'll bring your body back into balance. And then what can also happen is people, I'll say I'll prescribe them some CBD for some anxiety, and I give them a little titration guide to follow to find their dose, because cannabis is very individualized. It's not a one size fits all. There's no set dose for anyone. It's like, I've got to start you on this and I've got to work you up, and I have no idea where you're going to end up. I don't know. But they will come back after a month and say, yeah, my anxiety's, it's a bit better, I think. I'm in a better mood, but also my knee doesn't hurt anymore, or my gout in the toe hasn't come back. And just these other things will pop up, and it's just like, cool, all right, sweet. Well, that obviously was out of balance. CBD, the cannabis has come along, it's locked in and helped that area as well, because it's not specific to one area. Wherever, this is a very simple term, a very simple description, but I say, imagine where you've got some damage in your body or something's out of balance. It's going to pop out a cannabinoid receptor to signal to the body's cannabinoid system, hey, I'm in trouble, come down here, sort me out, let's get things back into balance. So all these receptors have popped out through. You give some cannabis, some CBD, or all these different type of things, they're going to go and lock into all these receptors. And then as they repair that cell, or as they bring it back into balance, the little receptor pops back in. And so therefore, over time, you don't actually need as much of the product, because your body's slowly getting more and more into balance, pulling these receptors back in. So there's more circulating cannabinoids, so you can start using less and less and less. And that's what I say to people. Cannabis isn't necessarily a lifelong thing. It's to bring your body back into balance, and then you can connect with it as needed when you feel like you're a little bit out of balance again. And that often relates to it, the way we're thinking in our mood, and that kind of thing is when people tend to think about interacting with cannabis and THC. But, it's not a lifelong thing, and it shouldn't be. And as with all medicines, it's to help your body get back into balance so you can then live naturally without assistance from medicines. And that's what I try and explain to people. Yeah, so that's how I explain it in simple terms to my patients. So I hope that kind of made sense. It was very basic terms, so you science guys don't come and say, that's wrong, that receptor don't.
Dude, Dr. James, that was perfect, man, because we've never actually, I don't think I've ever had someone define the endocannabinoid system on here, especially in terms that anyone could understand, right? And, what I loved about that too is, the analogies, the metaphors, things like that, like they really help. Like I love analogies and metaphors. Like I think they're like just one of the funnest aspects of language. And so whenever I meet someone who can include those in a way that is fun and exciting and gets me engaged, like, I mean, dude, I do this stuff all day, and I was like, tell me more about the ECS. Like I want to know, and so dude, I love that, man, and what I find is that I think there really is an awakening happening on the planet. Like I truly believe that to my core. Like the questions I'm being asked by family members that otherwise would never ask these things. I haven't been in their ear telling them about it, but they just kind of see some of my posts and they reach out about things that I'm like, whoa, okay, that's very interesting. Like there's just a lot happening right now. And what I find is that a lot more people are starting to be open to the idea of cannabis, other psychedelics, et cetera. And what I really feel is, that collectively we're getting fed up as a collective, right? Like we're kind of getting fed up. We're kind of seeing behind the veil, seeing through the matrix. And we're starting to realize that it's not that we want to combat the other side or whatever that even is. It's more like, hey, we just want to focus on being love, right? And really allowing that to exude out of us. And I think in that process, a lot of people are looking to heal, and they're finding cannabis for many different reasons, and I'm curious for you, like I know personally, like you work with cannabis as a spiritual aid and ally for yourself and things of that nature. Like, tell me a little bit about what that's been like for you, more on the spiritual side and these kind of things. Have you gotten any good ideas recently? Tell me everything, man, because I know we first connected over nerding out and everything about that. So
my ideas, I have piles of books beside my bed where I just write down ideas I think of. Like it's crazy, but I 100% agree about this movement happening, and it was so clear to me. I went over to the MAPS conference in Colorado this year, the Psychedelic Science Conference this year. My first time to the States, first time where cannabis was legal, so it was a pretty good time. But
that's a quite jarring thing.
This feeling was incredible. It was palpable. My hairs are standing on even just talking about it. The vibe there of this movement was all these beautiful people, and I mean beautiful in that they just were healthy and were radiating life. And that is the total opposite. When I go to a GP doctor's conference, these are some of the most unhealthy looking fuckers around. They wouldn't be able to run around the block. And yet they're the ones telling us how we're supposed to be healthy and how to live our life. I look at them and I think, you see cardiologists who are so fat, and you're like, what, mate? What are you doing? You're supposed to be an example. But at this conference, it was these were like healers over there. These were people that were banging singing to beat their own drum kind of thing. They had health worked out. They were just vibrant. They were fit. They were just oozing, compassion. Life was just booming out of it, and it was everyone there. And there was this feeling in Colorado that was just like, this is happening. This is a movement. We are looking at at society, and we're looking at medicine and the way that we are being told to, I guess, look after ourselves and treat ourselves. It's wrong. You can't say that we are a healthy species. We are not, and it's wrong. And this vibe, this thing over there was just amazing. And I really do believe that some big changes are coming. It's just unfortunate that the people in the positions that are making the decisions, to either allow cannabis to be prescribed more freely, to allow cannabis to be, they're the ones that they don't get it. They're so detached from society. They don't get it. They've gone through life. Probably their parents were doctors. They were very smart at school. They've gone from school to uni. They've never lived. They've probably never suffered. They've never had They've never gone to war. They've never had PTSD. They've never had battled with alcohol. Well, they probably are, but they'll sit there and drink their 12-year-old scotch and say, no, you can't have your cannabis, you bunch of hippies, kind of things.
Yeah.
But, it's frustrating. These people in these places making these decisions just don't get it. They just don't get it. And I wish more people in these positions of power would come to conferences like Colorado, like the MAPS conference and that kind of thing, and just see that there are options out there. And it's not this crazy, drug-fueled world that we're all in and we're all going, we are nice, normal, beautiful human beings that are using plants to help ourselves and help others. We're not doing anything radical. We are just using nature to treat ourselves. And I just, it's happening. It's happening. I hope we get to see it in our lifetime. But I think all we can do is, like we're doing, is just get the word out there, teach everyone what we know, and hope that the generations follow. And I think out here in Australia, it's people are pushing for it to go legal and to go recreational. And I'm saying no. We are not ready for this yet to go legal, because as humans, and especially as Australians, because we're all a bunch of convicts that just came out here and we're criminals and fight all the time and that kind of thing, we can't handle anything. We can't handle our piss. We can't handle our alcohol. We can't we are not ready to have such a powerful plant given to us without the education. The same as you have a look at our Indigenous population out there, and I think the Native Indians out there with alcohol. It was they got introduced to alcohol, and they just can't handle it. They don't know how to use it, and you know where it's led. And so I think if cannabis was to go legal out here, we would have the same problem, because people don't know how to use it. And that, like you were saying before, when we first started with cannabis as young fellas, no one really told us how to use it. It was like, hey, I'm getting some benefit from this. I'm just going to keep trying it. And then that's when you get into trouble, because you don't know. And that's where that term cannabis use disorder comes from, which is just someone who hasn't been told how to use their medicine. If you give someone a packet of prednisone, they're going to chew the whole thing, because it's going to pump them up. It's a steroid. It's going to pump them up. They're going to eat the whole thing. Do they have a prednisone use disorder, that kind of thing? No. You teach them how to use it. And so, I believe that for it to go legal out here, it's going to take a generation. It's going to take a generation of us guys like us, teaching people how to use it, how to incorporate cannabis into their life, and, not just into our diet and these type of things. Start bringing hemp back into our fibres and all this kind of stuff. The plant needs to be part of our life again, but I think it's going to take a full generation of people to learn how to integrate it. And then when people know how to use it as part of their life, that's when we can potentially say, okay, we've got enough confidence that we can release this and you guys can handle it and use it properly. But then, of course, you're going to get the businesses, and you're going to get the high THC flowers that come out and the fucking shatters and all this kind of stuff. Like, it just, I see what's happening over there in the States and some of the things. I'm like, ooh, is that the right thing? I mean, even when I went to Colorado, I couldn't get a flower under 22%. No one give me a CBD flower. And I was like, come on, guys, we've got some 60% stuff. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I don't want that.
Yeah. It's like, do you have anything for anyone that actually wants to be functional while they do it, right? Like, who wants to hold like a really amazing conversation, or like, talk about deep space or like something fun, like And, I think it's funny too, man, because one of the many things I love about you, Dr. James, is that you actually look at the real issue, right? Like, it's not cannabis use disorder, right? It's that someone has no idea how to use it. Like, there's no user manual for this plant, right? Like, it's almost like if you bought a brand new car, you had no idea what cars were, right? You buy a brand new car and there's no user manual, right? So like, think about how long it would be before, like, first of all, how long it would take you to even be able to drive the thing and figure that out, let alone how quickly you'd blow your engine because you had no idea that oil needed to be changed, right?
Yeah.
And so, these types of things are the real questions to be asking. And also, even below that, right? Why are people being drawn to cannabis in the first place, right? Like, why are people being drawn to become dependent on the plant or anything, right? Even if they are aware. For me personally, I think the real big challenge that society doesn't have an answer for, because they're not willing to actually remediate what it would take to like actually solve this issue as I see it right now, doesn't mean it's not going to get solved. It just means like the powers that be, like, the answer was never them, but it's definitely not them for this either, is lack of connection and lack of meaning. Like, many people feel completely lost in the world. They have no idea why they're here, like what their purpose is, where they're going, what success is, what their goals are. They have no idea who they are. So then they're being thrown into a world that says, go produce things, right? And everything in our cultures, at least Western cultures, are set up in order to produce more, right? You can get fast food. Why would food need to be fast? Well, because something else is more important, which is this thing called producing and being a productive member of society, right? It's even in that statement, productive, producive, right? Like, it's very interesting when you look at these things, and obviously these are much bigger challenges than I know an answer for, but like, I feel they're worth talking about, right? Because, these are the types of things that you, being a doctor, when someone comes into your office as opposed to a different doctor, you're supplying them with not just cannabis, man. You're supplying them with that connection of someone that's truly going to listen to them and is truly looking for a solution with them, right? Not just what solution is available that the pharmaceutical industries gave me as a solution list, but like, what with complex and critical thinking is actually going to help this patient find relief and remediate their challenge so they may go out and live a higher quality expression of life. And I think that right there too is the other medicine that is in high demand and short supply. Is like true connection, man, and
exactly.
And you're right, dude. Like, no diss on most doctors, but like, think about them. Like, they spend like 12 years in school. They're usually from, not usually, I don't want to stereotype, but like a lot of times from richer families. They don't have to go through those things. So they haven't mastered that. And to me, a doctor is first a doctor of connection. Because I mean, if you're not connecting with your patients, then how can you really have any answer, So I thought that part was, cool.
Connection is the one thing that's missing. I think that's the key word in everything. It definitely, in the medical space, when you're a family doctor, I don't know what it's like out there, but to make a living, I've got to pump through consults in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Sometimes some doctors are even doing 8. Like, how the hell can you connect with someone in 8 minutes, learn about them, learn about their history, and try and work out what the best thing is? You can't. Like, you've got to spend time with them. And that's why I think people are moving away from traditional doctors and going to naturopaths, healers, health coaches, because they get to sit down with someone and connect with them. And if you connect, you're halfway to healing. And so they'll leave a consult with a naturopath or something like that and feel they've had a connection. So they already start to feel like they've healed a little bit. Whereas they leave a GP after 8-minute consult, they've been blood pressure checked. Here's your script, out the door. It's like, well, okay, well, I don't know any better. So there's that connectedness that is missed in a doctor's consult, and I don't know how to fix it because the whole system is wrong, around the wrong way. I think, like, 8-minute consults, like, come on, you can't, like, that's just silly. So that needs to be changed. And then the other thing that we've definitely lost connection with is the planet. And the energies and everything that's around us, the universe, and all these different frequencies that are around us. And as a species, we have lost connection. And that's why we're all killing each other and we're all anxious and we're all, there's all these wars and shit going on. It's because we're just not connected. I was in Melbourne for the last 2 years, which is a big city here in Australia. We moved from the coast to Melbourne for a bit. And just the 2 years in the big city, I could probably count the amount of times I walked barefoot on grass on one hand. Like, I didn't have any grounding, no connection with the earth. It's just concrete. Everyone's in their phones. It's dark. Like, it's just like, whoa, guys. Like, it was really, really like, I did 18 months. I was like, I have to get out of here. I'm low in vitamin D. I'm depressed. But that's just society. Like, no one takes a moment to stop and step back and just look around you and see how amazing this planet is and connect with it. And I think that's why plant medicine is having such a big resurgence, because if you connect with plant medicine on a proper way, the most overwhelming sensation you get is connectedness and as being part of one with everything. It is so simple when you come out of it. I've got goosebumps talking about it because it brings me back to it's, no matter what your modality is, whether it is connecting through cannabis, whether it is through mushrooms or whatever, there's that feeling you come out and you're like, whoa, we are all connected in like very simple ways. I'm connected to that plant over there. Why the hell are we so bad and hurting each other so much? Like, it's so clear. And I think people are starting to realize that. People, you get people that they'll have their very first experience somewhere, and I'm not saying to go out and do this, okay? It's got to be done legally through the correct avenues. But when people do have a profound experience, that's the other thing that they come back and say with is they have this connectedness. And I think that's what you and myself we're trying to teach people, especially with cannabis being our specialty, is the connectedness. And I've developed a couple of things that I sent you, the old Minecraft protocol that I sent.
Yes, I love that, man.
Yeah, which I'm happy for you to share with the audience if they want to. And what it is it's just an easy step-by-step guide to follow. It's about a 3-hour process just to follow with yourself using cannabis, and so it must be prescribed if you're in Australia. Don't go and get illegal stuff. But it's just a way to a sort of a guide that I've given you to allow you to try and connect with, to try and open up different pathways in your mind, and you can get into some pretty sort of special places with that. So, it's connectedness is what we're about, and that's what the world is missing. We are not connected to each other.
100%, and thank you so much for the protocol too. I'll make sure if you want that in the show notes, I can throw it in there for everyone listening. And I think it's amazing. Like, I checked out James's work right when I first connected with James. Like, well, I don't know why I'm talking about in third person yet, but but it's like right when we first connected, man, you were like, dude, I'm working on this stuff too. I'm like, sick. Let's share some tech, and it's been so fun, like, getting in there out with you on this stuff, because what I really love about you, once again, is that you're speaking to the real things. Like, I tell people all the time, and it triggers the hell out of people. But, again, it's not my job to make people happy. But, like, I tell everyone, like, you're not addicted to cannabis. Even if you feel like you are, let me just lay something out for you. And if you still believe you're addicted to cannabis, cool, go for it, right? But, like, are you really addicted to cannabis just randomly, right? Because if cannabis was objectively addictive, then every single person that ever interacted with it would become addicted to it, right? So if that's not the case, which it's not, then it begs the question of what's left, right? Well, it's got to be subjective. So then we look at where most people are at in terms of the school system, what they're raised and understanding, pharmaceutical sales on the rise. Like, I mean, looking at society, like you said, like, we're not a healthy society overall. So when you look into all of this, you start realizing that we have no idea when we get out of childhood how to deal with discomfort. Right? Like, some of us, we know cold exposure, like we choose to put ourselves in these uncomfortable situations to build that resilience. But even for someone like me, it's taken a long time to be able to actually like feel into my feelings in the moment and make sure I'm not storing them. And so when you think about the fact that cannabis is a feminine medicine, it provides feelings of external comfort, warmth, getting out of your mind, relaxation, these kind of things. And then you think about the fact that the average human being has no idea how to evoke those things themselves. Then, of course, they're going to be finding anything that provides external feelings of comfort. So that's why I say, if you want to believe you're addicted to cannabis, go right ahead and go try to tackle this issue with cannabis. But it has nothing to do with cannabis. It's just the coping strategy you're using for what the actual issue really is. And what that actual issue is exactly the only place you can look for actual relief from that thing. Because what might happen is, let's say you decide to quit cannabis. Cannabis is the issue, right? So you quit it. Well, if you don't deal with what's underneath, you're probably going to form something that maybe is quasi-healthier, like an exercise addiction or a crazy food addiction or something like that. But at the same time, you're still living with that same feeling of discomfort and you're still numbing out to get away from it. So for me, it's like, and I know you feel the same way, life is about thriving, not surviving. And for me personally, when I believed that cannabis was the issue, that put me in survival mode, because now there's this thing out there that I have to stay away from, and I always have to be scared of it. And this is just the way I'm built. When in reality, that's all bullshit. That was just a story. So I 100% agree with you, man. Right? It's dead on.
I love that saying, thriving, not surviving. And I think that sums up the medical field at the moment, is just surviving. And that's what I was doing as a traditional GP, is I was just getting people to survive. I wasn't improving their life. I was just keeping them at that level. And most of the time that level is very unhealthy. So they were just surviving. But going back to the MAPS conference, those people were thriving, man. Those people were, I was just in awe, like looking at these people, and not just physically beautiful, but they all were, but just the energy that came out of these people was just, it was amazing. And to have, I think there was 12,000 of us there or something. Like it was at all walks of life. Like every single type of person was there, and it was just, everyone was beautiful. Like there wasn't a bad vibe in the whole place. So these people are thriving, and this is what we should be doing. Looking after ourselves. So, yeah, no, mate, we're definitely on the same page. It's like you said, when I found you online, and I'm like, whoa, this dude's doing the same sort of stuff I am, rad. And so we contacted each other. And I think we've had a pretty similar past. I think as well. We battled out cannabis addiction. Well, cannabis use disorder, whatever we want to call it, and we've worked out how to use it and that kind of thing. So, mate, it's crazy. It's so good talking to you. We're definitely on the same page.
It's really funny, dude, too, because I say this often. Listeners are probably like, oh, here he goes again. But it feels like with this cannabis stuff, the feeling I get, because my heart led me to it, right? Like, it wasn't that I wasn't interested in cannabis before. It was still my life, but in a totally different way, like completely 180 difference. Like, it was just, how much do you have? How much can you smoke, right? Like, it wasn't like, I had transitioned out of a lot of that. Like, I wasn't trying to smoke a lot anymore or anything like that. But when I was a kid, it definitely was about that, like in teenage years and things like that. I always knew I loved the plant, but I had no respect for it because I had no respect for myself at that age, And so it took me really like honing in, like respecting myself, and then opening up like my heart, after my father passed away, to really allow cannabis to show me what the potential was between us in our relationship. They're like, hey, if you want, there's this path where you could go down, and it's going to be really wild. It's going to be some big waves you got to surf, but you can really pave a path that feels as though you're buying Bitcoin in 2011. When most people aren't going to get it, if they even believe in it, right? Like, they're going to be like, that's stupid, right? And all of a sudden, almost overnight, it's going to be everywhere. And that's like, I've been talking to a couple of people recently who are very interested in helping me take it nationwide. Like, they see it and I'm like, I fucking knew it, right? And at the same time, there are still those like, days where those thoughts get in my head or whatever, especially after the last 3 years of just like, oh my goodness, is this the right thing? Are we putting out the right info? Things like that. But what I found is the more I trust my heart, the more that everything works out, and I imagine you felt very similar, to go back 20 years and know you were going to be here doing this right now. Like, it's amazing, man, and I always like bring attention to that, because how I look at cannabis, plant medicines, etc., is they are these beautiful, beautiful creatures, beautiful intelligence that are here to assist human beings, at least in one way, here to assist human beings in remembering who and what they truly are, so that we may have the force awaken in us. And by doing so, awaken the force in others, and all star in the real time Return of the Jedi movie. Like, that's straight up what I feel is happening right now. I literally feel, I feel like we're watching it. And the force would be love, right? Like, that's the force in our 3D reality, soon to be 4D, and I think that those of us that are tuning into that green ray energy, right? That love energy coming from the heart, and we're transcending from the solar plexus, third dimensional thinking, separation, etc., into this unity consciousness. There really is like a dichotomy happening where, even during the pandemic, you saw it, right? Like, well, we won't allow you to go to these places. Well, we won't allow you to go to these places. Well, we'll close this off from you. And what did everyone I know do? Oh, wow, I guess I really never needed clubs or bars or restaurants or anything. You guys just want to come over and cook food together? Oh, sweet. Like, thanks. That was awesome. Yeah. So like, when you start having those types of things happen where people are like, oh, wow, actually, I guess I didn't need any of that. Like, I can save my money and put it towards things that matter more to me. And as long as I have good people around me and we're truly healthy and we're connecting. And yes, sometimes we're having hard conversations, but we're having all of it, all of what's considered the human experience. I'm good with that, you know? And so I really feel that's what I'm seeing happen around me. And it's really amazing to see what's happening in Australia, because I feel like every time I talk to someone from Australia, things are heating up more and more in terms of like, you know, cannabis legalization. I believe you guys legalized psilocybin for therapy as well, right? Did that happen yet, or is it about to happen?
Yeah, we did. So that was exciting but disappointing at the same time. So yeah, it got down scheduled from a Schedule 9, which is only for trials, down to a Schedule 8 medication, which means it can be prescribed, but it's only able to be prescribed by certain psychiatrists. So I've done all my psychedelic training and stuff, like similar to MAPS courses and that kind of thing. So I think I'd be as qualified to administer these medications, but unfortunately it's only through certain psychiatrists. It's done in a clinical setting, which is probably the last place you would like to do psilocybin.
Yikes.
It's going to cost upwards of $20,000, and they're using synthetic medication. Come on. Like, they're not even using actually growing. Like, it's just, I know, exactly. Hands on head, like, what WTF, what the hell are you doing? So it was so frustrating. And I guess that kind of is what led me into the work with like that Mindcraft protocol that I did with you, because what people want and what psychedelic medication is you know, everyone thinks it's these big visuals and fireworks and that. Yeah, it can be that, but deep down what you get is essentially a different way of thinking. So you know, our default mode network of thinking, which is the way each day it's ingrained in how we've been brought up, this constant way we think. You know, and for people with depression and that kind of thing, they get a thought in their head and then it just spirals down into this negative thought. And that pathway is ingrained. And so what a psychedelic medication does, and that can be anything from psilocybin, cannabis, toad, you know, all these different things, all you're doing is taking something that can unplug that default mode network and allow other networks to start refiring again, so you can then have other ways of thinking about things. I mean, that's a very simple way to explain it. But that's what a psychedelic medication is. It's not psychedelic as in visuals and that kind of thing. It's just opening up these new pathways and giving you different ways to think. That's what led me to developing the Minecraft protocols. When psilocybin, I'd done all my training, I was excited. I thought it was going to happen, and then when it came out, it was like, well, no one can access this. Like, who's got $20,000 to go and who wouldn't want to take synthetic psilocybin in a bloody clinical setting? Like, that's a horrible thing to do. So that's where I just, you know, and working with, you know, I think you've had our buddy Dan McQueen on your show before.
Yes, I have. Yep.
So his book, Psychedelic Cannabis, everyone should read that. Like, that is just that.
It's a great book.
And I kind of based my Mindcraft protocol on what he says. And what you can do is you can essentially give yourself that shift that you need. So you can, you know, using it properly and using it safely, you can get that unplugging of your default mode network and start getting into other pathways that have previously been closed. And these pathways that have been closed are often the reason why people have, you know, underlying anxiety, all these feelings. Like, I battled anxiety, you know, I've done a lot of work internally for the last 5 years, but I battled anxiety. I had no idea why I had this bloody anxiety feeling. But now doing work with plants and that kind of stuff, I've realised it related back to sort of really young childhood and this wanting of more attention and that kind of thing. And I wasn't able to access that because that pathway was closed off prior to me having a psychedelic experience and opening up that pathway. And so that's just what you know I'm trying to do with the Minecraft thing. But yeah, the down schedule. Everyone was like, because when I went over to Matt's, everyone was like, "Go Aussies," and I'm like, "Yeah, kind of." Like, we'll take it. God, and it was very interesting at that conference. Actually, Dan was there, Dan McQueen was there, and like, I would talk to people. That's what I say. I'm a cannabis doctor from Australia. Blah blah blah. And they, oh, okay. What about psychedelics? I'm, well, you know, cannabis is a psychedelic. And it was like, really? And it was funny that everyone was over there drinking toad and ayahuasca and ketamine and all these things, and no one was talking about cannabis. And I sent so many people to Dan. I said, go and see Dan over there and get his book and have a read, because cannabis is this overlooked. You know, it's one of the original medicines. It's definitely a femme. Like, it's definitely female. Like, whenever you connect with her, she's caring, she's loving. You know, and it's just been overlooked. And it's so exciting now that we've got this resurgence, because it is very accessible and cheap. And done properly, you can have some pretty good experiences with it. But you can't go into your bud shop and get some 28% rocket fuel. Let's just go. that's not what you want. You need your proper start, But yeah, have a read of Dan's book, everyone. The psychedelic cannabis, and then if you want, I guess you contact Ryan and get my Mindcraft protocol. But please use it safely. I put it's to be used safely. It's not going to help everyone. Don't use it if you're very mentally unwell. Just all this to just be sensible with the guys. It's just a path to follow and a way to have a 3-hour sort of session. Preferred if you have sitters with you, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's there to use and use it safely.
Yeah, 100%, man. And, guys, I always say too, minimum effective dosing, right? You can always take more, right?
Yeah.
But you'll be surprised if you're really aware and you tune in and you be intentional, how much 1 or 2 hits from cannabis will do. And this is coming from someone who used to smoke 8th blunts, right? Like, I get it, guys, right? For anyone who's like, that's ridiculous, right? Like, I at one point thought it was too. But what I find is that, one thing not often talked about in the realm of psychedelics, I mean, it is talked about, but I haven't heard it talked about from this specific angle I'm about to get into, is how, like, for instance, kratom, right, which is another medicine that I've utilized in my life. It's completely different if you take a little versus a lot. So, like, a lot of people maybe start off taking a lot and they're like, oh, this is what kratom is, but they don't really know what it is unless they've tried taking a very little amount, right? Because then it acts as more of a stimulant, more of a euphoric, right? So cannabis is very similar. Like, yes, many people are used to, connecting with whatever the maximum amount you connect with is. So if you're a 2-bag in the volcano person, you do 2 bags every time because you do it every night. Or if you're a joint person, you smoke the whole joint every time because you're used to it. But when was the last time you took just 1 or 2 hits and saw what that did? Especially combining it with something like Mindcraft protocol, like, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And one thing that's funny too, Dr. James, is one of the things I think about often when it comes to psychedelics, cannabis, etc., and the laws around them is like, would it be so much to ask that, like, someone who's actually done these once, at least in their life, like, is in the room when they're making these laws? Like,
Yeah.
That was like a bunch of, like, probably old white guys in a room, like, oh yeah, we'll do it synthetic and it'll be 20 grand. We'll make so much money. And it's like, guys, you guys realize these grow out of shit, right? And like, you didn't invent these, like, they're literally everywhere and anywhere. Like, it's comical to me, it really is comical. I'm like, it's just so awkward. It feels the same feeling as when your parents try to be cool around you when you're in your teenage years. It's the same thing. Like, they're like, oh, hello, young kids, we have a new thing we did. We legalized psilocybin, and these are the standards of it. And we're just like, that's weak as shit, dude. Like, that's the best you guys can come up with. Like, what happened? Were you guys, like, drunk when you made that? Like, was it a bet to make it as bad as it could be? Like, I'm not really getting what this could be, And at the same time, like, I'm grateful for progress, right? Like, I'm not going to be a negative Nancy about it, but it is funny. Like, it is funny because, like, at the end of the day, we know that, yeah, sure, the clinical approach may be for some people what they feel more comfortable with. I'm not sure why, but it will allow different people to get access to it. So cool. Awesome for that. But, nothing's going to beat doing the actual medicine in the actual place, like, of nature that you want to do it. Nothing's going to beat that, And so they can try to patent it all they want. They can try to do whatever they want. But I think the bubble has already blown with people like Joe Rogan and Aubrey, just them two talking about it. I think most people now are, when the government comes out with synthetic ayahuasca, they're like, "Nah, man, I'm going to go to Peru. Thanks, but no thanks." Like,
Aubrey was at he was at MAPS, and I gotta admit, cool. I sort of like, I guess coming from a clinical scientific background, I kind of for a while had kind of poo-pooed people like Aubrey, like these guys that hadn't had any training, but were out there spruiking how to be healthy and this kind of stuff. And I kind of was like, he's just got fame because he's mates with Joe Rogan. I didn't really know much about him. And then I thought, I'll go and listen to him talk. Man, I got a man crush on that dude at the end. He was like, he is a dude. And like just so genuine. Dude. And I was just sitting there listening to him and going, this guy gets it. This guy is, I'm like, I was so wrong about this bloke. Like, he was a dude. And so I listen to everything he says. But yeah, no, he was great. He was really good. But just interesting, like what you said about the bushies growing in the poo. It's there's this. I heard, I can't remember who said it, but I really believe it. Like, there's a lot more mushrooms popping up, and mushrooms will always grow around where humans are and livestock are, and that kind of thing. And there's a good theory that are more mushrooms and things like this being exposed to us because the planet is just saying, you stupid species can come and eat this and connect because you're killing us all. You're killing this planet, you big, dumb, two-legged creature. Come and connect with the planet. And I quite like that because they are popping up everywhere. Like out here in Australia, like you can walk out into nearly any back paddock and there's going to be something. This is not saying go and eat mushrooms, guys. Don't do it. But I'm just saying it's there. And I like that theory that the planet is basically singing out to us, putting out these things saying, please come and connect back with us and connect back with the planet and connect back with the universe, because the way you're going at the moment, none of us are going to be here very soon because you're just going to ruin everything. And I quite like that because they're popping up everywhere.
Oh, man, 100%. It's so funny. Like I pictured in my mind that happening, right? Mushrooms popping up everywhere. And what did I picture next? Some guy next to it like, I don't know, show me the research, show me the science, right? Like not realizing like, dude, wait, you realize that most science and pharmaceutical studies these days are bought and paid for by certain interests that are vetted in the opposite of curing things. Like they just want to keep treating things.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, like when people talk about cannabis with me, they're like, well, the research is still out. I'm like, listen, if you guys really think that people can use cannabis their entire life and they still have to really look for what it might be doing that could be negative, like that is that big of a deal when you're also, as you're saying that, around 5G, you're also probably showering in tap water. You're also driving a metal container every day. Like life is risk, right? Like there is just inherent risk. And at the end of the day, something that is a plant that is natural to the planet, that has been talked about for over 10,000 years in almost every occult practice. And that also does have so much science out now around it. And also now we have education like what we do, both of us, of teaching people how to utilize it. Like I'm pretty okay with the potential challenge of that. Maybe someone using too much, like, hey, you know how much easier it's going to be to get them to stop using too much cannabis than using too many opiates,
Exactly.
right? Like, or using too much alcohol, or even using too much nicotine. Like, I get it that in the perfect world, we'd all be completely free, right? Like, we'd be so in alignment and in fourth dimensional consciousness that we didn't need anything to be in a state of heaven all the time. But we haven't got there yet, and until we get there, right, can we all agree that a lot of the options that are out there, albeit I'm not knocking Western medicine, once again, it has its place, but that it's not doing the job of actually allowing us to live high quality lives, right? Like it's not its thing, right? It's not meant for that, so it's not even a fault of it. It's just like, these things that have been, passed down for generation and generation that have been utilized in these types of practices. And especially, if there's any research out on something being hidden from the public for a long time, probably want to look into that, and cannabis is at the top of that list, but other psychedelics as well. So James, this has been amazing, man. I could literally talk to you all day. I'm so excited to have you back on. Where can people find you? Of course, I've already said we're going to put the protocol in the show notes, but where can people find you, connect with you, and keep up to date on everything you're doing, man?
Yeah, no, mate. Thank you once again, and I'll come back anytime, mate. We can talk for hours, so I'd be delighted to come back, and hopefully we can actually tee up a face-to-face one soon, whether I come out there or not in winter. After talking to you pre-show, I'm not coming out to Boston in winter. Yeah. Maybe you come out here. And,
don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, people, you can find me at my website, which is drjamesstewart.com.au. So drjamesstewart, stewart.com.au, or if you want the short version, drjs.com.au, and just redivert to the other one. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. They'll be all in the show notes. So yeah, guys, hit me up, connect with me. I'm keen to sort of get out to the States as well again. I had a ball out there. And yeah, keen to come and see you, mate, face to face, and maybe have a little session and talk about fourth dimensions and things like that. So I'll get really nerdy.
Yes, dude. You had me at fourth dimension, and it's funny too, man, because I always say for science, right? Like for research purposes, we may interact with some cannabis just for science, so I love that, man. I'm so excited to meet you in person. And Dr. James, I got one last question for you, man, and that question is this. Let's say someone listens to this episode and they get extremely excited to look into psychedelic medicines in their own life. What is the one piece of advice you would bestow on them to allow them to use proper discernment in choosing whether or not plant medicines as a whole are right for them in their life at this time?
Oh, man, that's a good question. That's a big question.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to your feeling, general day to day, how you're doing. Are you happy with the place you're in, both mentally, physically? Are you connected? Do you have good relationships? is there love in your life? Are you giving love outwards? Because I truly believe the energy you put into the universe is the energy that comes back to you. So are you loving yourself? Are you loving everyone else around you? Do you feel connected? And I think we've said it a few times, but that connectedness is the main thing that I think would or should turn someone to maybe some psychedelic medicine. Is if you feel you've lost connection with people around you, with the universe, if you're stuck in the same route of thinking, so if you've got depressive thoughts, these kind of things, then potentially some psychedelic medicine would be the way to go. But of course, you need to speak to people who can guide you. Don't just go and do it yourself. You need to speak to people who are experienced. In Australia, make sure you do it through the legal routes. Follow these guides. But you've really got to ask yourself internally first. You've got to connect with yourself first and see if you can get some answers, and then that will tell you whether it's time or not. And there are different modalities. If you're worried, then start with cannabis. She's friendly, she's lovely, she's nurturing. Low doses, like we said, that's going to be the way to sort of, to move into things. And then you will see what space you get to. And you may not need anything further than cannabis. You may not need to go to Peru in the jungles and go and drink ayahuasca for 3 days kind of thing. Like, you just may need that little shift that we were talking about before. So I guess, it just comes back to assess yourself, assess how you're feeling, assess your relationship with yourself and the environment and the people around you. And do you need a slight change in the way you think? And if so, then some psychedelic medicine or plant medicine is the way to go.
Dude, I love that. Spoken like a true wizard, Dr. James. I appreciate you and love you so much, man. And guys, I hope that episode was as amazing for you as it was for me and James. We had a blast with it. Like I said in the show, James is amazing at what he does. Make sure you go give him a follow. Go check out his website and keep up to date on all the amazing things he's doing, because this is just the beginning for him. And guys, as always, if you enjoyed the show, please, we'd love it if you could give us a 5-star review. It helps us get the show out to more amazing psychedelic proponents out there. So until next time, everybody, may the force be with you to infinity and beyond. Sending you all my love. Peace.